spiritual food for thought.
Welcome back to Spiritual Food for Thought. I thank you for joining me once again. In this video, we're going to look at something people often say and just how foolish and potentially ignorant it is to say such a thing. And that is when people claim like, oh, well, there were 613 commandments for the Jews. And then they usually juxtaposition that against something like, I'm glad I'm not them. I don't have to worry about any of that. Now, the first thing to remember is that words have meanings. So if we look at the Jews isn't even mentioned in Scripture until 2 Kings chapter 16. Okay? The word Jew isn't even mentioned until Esther chapter 2. You have Mordecai the Jew. Jew originally just meant a descendant of Judah. And then what you had is the kingdom split into southern and northern. So you had the northern kingdom of Israel, the southern kingdom of Judah. And Judah was Judah, and then Benjamin, and then some of the Levites, and others may have been mixed in as well, but generally it's Judah, Benjamin, and then some of the Levites were the southern kingdom. That's why you have Mordecai the Jew of the tribe of Benjamin. That's why you have Paul, who was a Jew of the tribe of Benjamin. And then you also have what became Judaism, which is not synonymous with the commandments of God in the Old Testament. We know this from the words of our Messiah. You look at something like Mark 7, Matthew 15, time and time again, he tells them you make the word of God of none effect. By your traditions, you teach for doctrines the commandments of men. He says you guys are doing something different. They created their own rules, and then they created their own religion, and you could also be a Jew by being part of Judaism. So if Jews is not mentioned until 2 Kings, and we get the law in generally Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, there's quite a gap there. So the law was given to all God's people. They were the native-born Israelites, but then also whosoever would come unto them. The law was for all the believers. All the believers. When Rahab left Jericho, as it was about to be destroyed, and joined herself unto the nation of Israel, she was one of the strangers who sojourned among them. So the laws applies to her. When you have somebody like Ruth, the Moabitess, say, your God will be my God, and your people will be my people, then those laws applied to her. And we have this over and over and over again in Scripture that there's one law for the homeborn or the native-born and one law for the stranger. Exodus 12:49, Numbers 15:16, Numbers 15:29, Leviticus 24:22, Exodus 12:19, Leviticus 16:29, Leviticus 17:12. I'll read for you Leviticus 18:26. Ye shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not commit any of these abominations, neither any of your own nation, nor any stranger that sojourneth among you. Okay? One law, whether you're a native born or a stranger who sojourned in. Look at Leviticus 19:34. But the stranger that dwelleth with you shall be unto you as one born among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. So he says, the stranger that dwells with you, the stranger that comes unto me, that has me as their God, they're going to be as if they were a native born. Nothing to do with Jews here. To do with God's people. So first off, when somebody says, oh, those commandments were for the Jews, unless you're talking about the commandments of Judaism, which are not the same as the commandments of God, you've got a problem. Because the commandments of God were never only for the Jews. They were for all the 11 other tribes besides Judah. They were supposed to be for the whole northern kingdom, not just the southern kingdom. And they were supposed to be distinctly different from what they've turned them into in Judaism, and they were at the time of our Messiah. He himself says, look, when they sit in Moses' seat, do that which they bid you observe to do, but don't follow it how they follow it. When they read it from the law, it's good. But their traditions, the way that they do it, is wrong. That's what he said 2,000 years ago. So the other problem that we have is this number 613. I have not personally counted, and it's not the fact that people are saying 613. It's that when you say, oh, the 613 commandments, you're making it seem like this big, large number of just crazy stuff, incredibly large, as, oh, who could possibly handle any of that? And you make it seem like you have a problem with those 613. So if you look at something like Exodus 23 to 17, you get the 10 Commandments. Now, except for those pesky 4 verses, 8 to 11 about the Sabbath, nobody generally in modern Christianity has a problem with the other 9. So then what do we do with that 613? Well, now it's only 604 you have a problem with, right? Well, maybe not. Let's continue. In Leviticus 7, 26 and 27, we see something that they shouldn't drink any blood. Do you remember Acts 15? Do you remember that being reiterated? See, now we only have 603 that you might have a problem with. And that one, I'll give it to you, that's reiterated in the New Testament, okay? Acts 15, they talk about don't eat things strangled, things sacrificed to idols, don't drink the blood. It's mentioned there. But what about stuff like Leviticus 19:14, where it says don't curse the deaf and don't put a stumbling block in front of the blind? You're not going to show me that verse in the New Testament. It doesn't exist, but this is part of the 613 commandments that many claim are for the Jews. So what's the problem with that? Well, nobody should be cursing the deaf. Nobody should be putting a stumbling block in front of the blind. So now we only have a problem with 601, right? Boy, this number's shrinking quick. We're also told as a command that we shouldn't practice unrighteousness and judgment. We shouldn't despise the poor and respect the rich just because of how much money somebody makes. We're going to change the way that judgment is given unto them. No, that's wrong. So now we've got 600. Says we shouldn't be a talebearer. Okay, 599. Shouldn't hate your brother in your heart. Is that the, well, I'm glad that's nailed to the cross. Now I can hate my brother in my heart. No. 598. How about bearing grudges? That's one of the 613 commandments. You shouldn't bear a grudge. Okay, 597. How about this one? You shouldn't make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead. Is that one of the ones that you're, railing against when you're like, oh, the 613 commandments for the Jews. I'm so glad I have nothing to do with them. Jesus set me free. Now I can make cuttings in my flesh for the dead like I always wanted to. I don't think that's your personal testimony. I think that's rather absurd, and I think it's absurd to pretend even that it's something you're against by saying, oh, the 613 commandments for the Jews. So I'm guessing we're down to 596 right now. How about don't prostitute your daughter to cause her to be a whore? Bad enough that he has to say it. Even worse that people still break that commandment. And even worse that when you say, oh, the 613 commandments for the Jews, it sounds like you're against that. But now we're down to 595. How about vexing strangers? It's a commandment, you shouldn't vex a stranger. 594. How about having unequal weights and false balances? If somebody comes over to you to buy a pound of flour, you use the light weight. So it's only 14 ounces and it shows up as being a pound and you rip them off. Is that the big deal here? We're going to, fight against this commandment from God because it's such a terrible commandment? No, I don't think we are. 593. Says we shouldn't sacrifice our children to Molech. 592. Shouldn't curse your parents. 591. Here's it gets kind of interesting, right? It says don't have sex with your father's wife. Is that one of the 613 commandments for the Jews? Well, technically, it's one of those 613, and technically, it would have applied to people from Judah or people from the southern kingdom. But if you don't think it applies to you, you might want to check your Christianity. You might want to check your faith. 590. How about don't have sex with your daughter-in-law? 589. Don't lie with mankind as with womankind, okay? I'm guessing the vast majority of you guys still believe that. I know not all the church still believes that. I mean, it's one of the commandments from Leviticus. Shouldn't we just throw it out by now? I don't think so. 588. Don't take a wife and her mother. How's your relationship with your mother-in-law? You're not contemplating stuff like this, right? This isn't why you have a problem with these 613 commandments, is it? Guessing not. 587. It says here, don't lie carnally with a beast as well. That's one of those 613 commandments. Now, I have sheep. I've got sheep. But I have them for meat, for wool, for milk. They're an edible lawnmower, and they fertilize as they go. I don't have them so that I can lie carnally with them. Why do you have sheep? I'm guessing if you have animals, it's not to lie carnally with them. So you don't have a problem with that commandment either, do you? 586. It says don't uncover your sister's nakedness. Okay. 585. says don't have sex with a blood-related aunt, your father's sister or your mother's sister. Don't uncover their nakedness. Okay, I know Thanksgiving's coming up. People have family gatherings coming up. This commandment, I'm guessing in your practice, is still in effect. So we only have a problem with 584 right now. It says don't have sex with an aunt related by marriage either. Okay, just because it's not your mother's sister or your father's sister, if it's your uncle's wife, don't have sex with her. That's one of God's commandments. It's one of God's commandments we should obey, even if it's from the book of Leviticus, even if some people claim it's one of the 613 commandments for the Jews, it's still going to be in effect today and we should still be obeying it. So 583. You see how this number's just dropping so quick? We no longer have those pesky 613 commandments to worry about. Now we only have 583. Shall we continue? I will. It says don't have sex with your brother's wife. 582. Don't have sex with anyone who's near kin to you. 581. It says, well, don't lie with your son's children, your grandchildren. Don't do that. Okay? 580. Here, maybe these are some of the ones that people struggle with these days. If you see your brother's ox going astray, you should help him get it back. You don't just ignore it. Okay? That's not why Jesus died. So that now if you see your neighbor's animal wandering astray, you just pretend you didn't see it and you go about your business. Now, that's part of loving your neighbor as yourself. 579. If you find some clothing that somebody lost, you keep it with you till the owner comes looking for it. You just don't leave it out there in the field to get rained on, or you just don't let somebody steal it. You take care of it and you let the owner come. That's one of those commandments. 578. If you see your brother's donkey or ox falling down, big animal, and he's trying to get it back up, you go help him lift it up. This is one of those 613 commandments for the Jews people like to claim they're against. No, we only have 577 that people are going to be against now, but we're going to continue. We're going to keep it going down here. How about cross-dressing? A man wants to wear things pertaining to a woman wants to wear things pertaining to a man. Yeah, that's one of God's commandments. Did Jesus die so that you can go dress up like a woman now? Okay? I don't think so. 576. Rape. 575. 578. If you see your brother's donkey or ox falling down, big animal, and he's trying to get it back up, you go help him lift it up. This is one of those 613 commandments for the Jews people like to claim they're against. No, we only have 577 that people are going to be against now, but we're going to continue. We're going to keep it going down here. How about cross-dressing? A man wants to wear things pertaining to a woman wants to wear things pertaining to a man. Yeah, that's one of God's commandments. Did Jesus die so that you can go dress up like a woman now? Okay? I don't think so. 576. Rape. 575. It says here, one of these commandments from God, if you vow a vow to him, do it. Don't be lazy or slack about fulfilling your vows to him. Be a person of your word. 574. Don't oppress the poor. 573. Fathers shouldn't be put to death for the children, nor children for the father. If your father murders somebody and is worthy of the death sentence, even in, many countries these days, you don't get to die for it. Okay, that's his sin. He can die for it. This is one of those 613 commandments. I hope this is starting to make sense. I hope it started making sense a long time ago. It says, don't pervert the judgment of the fatherless. 571. Don't take widow's clothing as a pledge. 570. Don't take a reward to slay innocent people. 569. Don't kidnap people. 568. So if you have an animal that's known to be dangerous and it kills someone, you're going to be held responsible. That's what God commands. And that's okay. That's a good commandment. 567. And if you cause somebody's field or vineyard to be eaten, if you let your animal into somebody else's field, somebody else's pasture, somebody else's garden, and it eats all their stuff, you're supposed to make restitution. This is a good law. This law is okay. 566. Now, if you start a fire and it ruins somebody's standing corn, you should be held responsible and make restitution. 565. It says you shouldn't afflict a widow. 564. You shouldn't afflict the fatherless. 563. You see, we've already dropped this by 40. If you dig a pit and somebody's animal falls in it, you should be held responsible. You should make restitution. Now we've only got 562 commandments we have a problem with. And I'll tell you what the deal is. A lot of the commandments pertain to the temple or the tabernacle and the priesthood and the sacrifices. Okay? Those don't even exist right now. So we can just kind of move those to the side. And if we look at what's left that you could even contemplate as being potentially valid, a lot of these make a lot of sense. You know, a lot of these are true. Where people get hung up generally is the Sabbath, the appointed times, and the dietary law. That's most of people's problem. And I think that if you actually look through scriptures, if you had a biblical foundation for your faith, and he said something like, this is going to be forever throughout all your generations. He talks about that. Some of the appointed times, feast days, the Sabbath. He doesn't say until Messiah. He says forever throughout all your generations, a perpetual covenant. If people had a biblical foundation for their faith and they started with the law and the prophets before they got to the New Testament, they would still believe this stuff because it's the theological seminaries, it's the study Bibles, it's the church denominations these days, it's the traditions of men based on the modern church that teaches against that stuff. They come in out of left field and they go right to the New Testament and they make up their own doctrine. They remove that foundation which was laid. The foundation be destroyed, if the foundation be removed, what can the righteous do? Well, we can actually restore it. Okay? And there was a reformation to taking Catholicism and reforming it to make it look more biblically accurate. But there was no restoration, actually going back to the foundation that our God laid. We have that opportunity. Okay? We have that opportunity. So I'd just recommend, before you ever say something again like the 613 commandments for the Jews, you realize those commandments were not just for the Jews. And you should also realize what you're speaking against. I could go on. There's more. But I hope that you get my point. Be blessed. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.